our special presentation. And we're really talking today, we're focusing on non-functional lawn. We understand there is some lawn that you just have, it's the best choice. It's the best solution for an athletic field or something like that. But we're really targeting non-functional lawn today. And we're going to hear from our panelists, and then we're going to do our Q&A. So we're going to hold all our questions, and if you could be sure to be putting that in your Q&A box till the end of the speaker presentations, that would be great. And then we're going to review the survey results. So many of you chimed in on your registration form, some barriers and solutions, and we're going to take a look at that. And then finally, we're going to look at some other resources and our new landscape rebates, which are providing a little bit more kickback for you and your customers. So lawns are the largest irrigated crop in the United States and dominate our urban and suburban environments. In California's arid and Mediterranean climates, turf grass demands 70% more water than climate-appropriate plants. To inspire Californians to make the switch, 3 experts will present ideas on how to remove the barriers and inspire people to convert lawns to climate-appropriate regenerative landscapes. And with us today, we're going to start with Lou Bendon. Lou is the President of Flycatcher Marketing. And Lou worked with water districts and private companies to promote water efficiency in landscapes all across the country. And he worked with San Diego County Water Authority to look at how to change people's perspective on what a water efficient landscape looks like. And Lou, you can go. We also are working with Rebecca Pollon. Rebecca is the landscape manager of Rossmoor, the Rossmoor community, HOA. And she's going to be presenting on the 5-year landscape management plan and the Give a Foot, Get a Foot. We will end with Anne-Marie Benz. Anne-Marie is a California Native Plant Society Horticultural Manager. She's going to talk about lawn to native plants and also give us some tips on working with children and pets. And with that, I'm turning it over to Lou.
So can you see my screen?
Not quite yet.
Well, you need to unshare, I think.
I did.
All right, let's just try this again. How are we now?
No, but I can go back to my screen. And I will just go to your presentation.
So thank you, Kristen. My name is
Sure.
Lou Bendon. Was the president of Flycatcher Marketing and worked in the space of landscape and landscape water use for over 20 years. And my boss and I became my partner, and I were sitting around wondering what we could do that was more meaningful than selling shoes for Birkenstock and Nike or chipsets for Intel. And we wanted to do something before our careers were over. As luck would have it, we were hired by HydroPoint to launch their weather track controller, smart controller, and then the Irrigation Association hired us to do the markets and a market transformation plan for smart controllers and the SWAT committee. And that was followed up by an assignment with Weathermatic and their SmartLine, and then Rainbird. And we worked for East Bay MUDs, the city of Santa Barbara, Jordan Valley, and of course the San Diego County Water Authority. And today I'm going to share with you a series of findings of a body of research that's mostly ours, but others, because we call these things truths, and it's because the research is extremely consistent. But why are we here today? We're here today because of drought. That Lake Mead is now at 143 feet below full. That Shasta Lake looks like it looks today. That in Santa Clara, that the Anderson Reservoir is at 3%. And our reality is this. Our reality is that the snowpack, which we're so dependent on for water, has gone from what you see in March to May to July. And instead of running off, a lot of it was was absorbed by dry ground, because this is truly the second year of a drought. So my message to you is that we're all in this together. That's what we learned from the research, and that mitigating landscape water use permanently is a goal for most all water agencies. And part of it's driven because, according to the AWWA, 58% of all urban water use is for landscapes, and half of that is wasted. And at the top of their list of solutions is reducing what I call superfluous turf. But success is difficult. And for the contractor, the water's your lifeblood. So absent water, your customers don't need to irrigate because there's no water to do it with. So as I said, we did a large body of research. These orange dots represent where this research touched on in areas in the country. When I say large body, it was 55 focus group, 850 in-depth interviews, and a series of quantitative studies. So what did we learn? The truth, number one, is that we agree that we need to conserve water. People are generally concerned about the environment. And what they've said to me in in-depth interviews is that they want to do the right thing. And they're aware that it's important to conserve water, which is why, as Kristen showed, that people reducing water is because they answer the bell every time there's a drought and they're asked to conserve. Truth number two is when you talk to them, they already feel like they're doing they're already doing their part. And while they want to do the right thing and agree that wasting water is a bad problem, but they already feel they're already doing everything they can do, and they have a difficult time understanding what more they could do. And when they look for opportunity to save water, they quickly point their fingers at their neighbors, their cities, and as other communities as real water wasters. And I had one person in a focus group refuse to accept the fact that the water running down the gutters was from their out-of-line emitters and not their neighbors. And when it comes to water use, we just don't have a clue. Even with AMI, most homeowners and many businesses as well are completely unaware of the water they're using. And when you ask them on an unaided basis, they underestimate their amount of water they use. I use the word severely. Severely is they underestimate the water by 3x to 5 times. It's unbelievable. So the bottom line is we don't have a clue. And those who accept that they don't understand it, they still don't understand if the right amount if the amount they use is right for their property or landscape. They're just not qualified to do that. And the scariest thing for me is that in some areas, we've heard in focus groups where people said that outdoor water use isn't even part of the water they use. So when it comes to our own water usage, so appearances are really important. It's absolutely essential to the customer because it's part of their identity. So there's no way of getting around it. We can't tell people to buy brown because they're just not going to accept it, and that keeping their yard beautiful is critical to their identity, to their neighborhood, and to their community. So the truth number 5 is that opportunity knocks. That landscape professionals have a tremendous amount of influence over the outdoor water use decisions. Homeowners, property managers don't really know how to solve these problems, and they turn to the landscape contractor first because they're the ones who have the knowledge about how to implement water saving strategies with their landscapes. But at the end of the day, demand lies with the end user. Contractors will not fight the customer if the customer is set in their ways about what they have to have, because they don't want to lose the customer. So they respond to the needs and requests of their customers, the homeowner or any other end user like a property manager. So, and truth number 7 is people don't know what to do. Very little is done typically to conserve water outdoors other than stopping a leak, aligning heads, or putting in drip irrigation, which people think is more than sufficient. Homeowners think that changing their irrigation schedule, think of changing their irrigation schedule before they change their plant palette, because making changes to their landscape palette presents more of a challenge. They don't know what to do, and they're afraid, and that they're attached to their lawns. And that one person said to us, again, scary, that it's everybody's God-given right to have a green lawn. And that's a quote. Furthermore, HOA CC&Rs can make lawn conversions a challenge because it's in their regulations. And that xeriscape and drought tolerant are perceived to be cactus, brown, and ugly. So when we use the term xeriscape with customers, they shake their head no because of that perception. So we did another study following this other research with the San Diego County Water Authority. We were hired to rebrand their conservation and figure out how to overcome objections from the customers. And these are key findings. They're consistent with what I just mentioned. They feel like the utilities are crying wolf, and just look at the cities use water. As I said, they turn to everybody else but themselves when they think about wasting water. And they think of San Diego as a paradise. Their identity is with the community, and they want that reflected in their homes and landscaping. But at the same point in time, water conservation is a necessary way of life for everybody in San Diego County. But give me green and give me lush. And many San Diegans dislike cactus and succulents, as I said, xeriscape, because the perception is it'll turn San Diego's paradise into a desert-like environment in Phoenix or Las Vegas. These are their words. And a small number of heavy users mention changing out plants to friendly Californian native plants, but not those ugly brown things. So we had them in focus groups, and we wanted to test this idea of how we can overcome their objections to their perception of what a water efficient landscape might look like. So we showed them pictures, and this is what they don't like. Keep in mind, as I subject of this is they can have their cake and eat it too. That's exactly what we want them to think. And this is what they don't like: the brown, the desert-like, the gravel, the DG. And basically to them, it's unattractive. To others, it might be, but by and large, they find it unattractive. And then what we did was we put pictures around the focus group room, and they were pictures of Mediterranean gardens that are basically, pretty water efficient. And the focus group attendees, participants, got up out of their seats and started walking around the room, looking at all these pictures, going, well, I could have this. This would look good in my yard. And they were talking amongst themselves saying, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. This is something that would really work. So we leveraged it. We took all what we learned. We know that they want to do the right thing. They have no idea what they do. And we, as a way to overcome their objections, we came up with the tagline, a better way to beautiful, that people can have their cake and eat it too. They can have a beautiful landscape. They can do their part for their community. They can actually have a landscape that requires less maintenance. And that bottom line is, and my message to all of you today is that we are all in this together. We need to work to reach a common goal. And this is what the Better Way of Beautiful looked like as we took it further into websites, et cetera. So thank you very much. And Kristen, I am done.
Thank you so much, Lou. That was really inspiring. And we're moving on to Rebecca Pollon.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Pollon. I'm the landscape manager at Rossmoor, which is a retirement community in Walnut Creek. There are quite a few people from Rossmoor here today watching this presentation, and I'm so glad to see that so many of you attended. That makes me very, very happy. So today we're going to talk about what we're calling Give a Foot, Get a Foot, which is a lawn improvement program, and it builds really a lot on so many of the things that Lou just spoke about, really trying to focus on what's positive about lawn conversions, what people are open to converting to, and also letting people know that this is not an all or nothing game. Having some lawn, like Kristen suggested, is okay, as long as we're going in and trimming out the fat, so to speak, and really looking at those areas where we can convert it to something else. So for those of you that don't know Rossmoor, it is an active adult community, also known as a retirement community. It is 1,800 acres. It's all of the area that's encompassed by this red line. And there are 10,000 residents here and also 22 HOAs. So anybody who's worked in the landscape industry has had that experience where you go to somebody's home or some sort of community, anything where you're talking to more than one person, and half the time you feel like you're playing marriage therapist. You know, people almost never agree. So that is a really important component of everything we do here, is making sure that even if these 10,000 residents aren't going to agree, they can at least all get on the same page and start to work together, moving towards a common goal. And so what we do all have in common, and really what we have in common with the rest of California and the Bay Area, is that we are facing these threats to life as we know it. We are having to reshape the way we look at the landscape, the way we design our landscapes, and our relationship to the landscapes. First and foremost, there's fire. We need to make sure that everybody's safe, and we need to do as much as we possibly can to make sure that in the case of fire, we have done everything that we can do. Water, which we're talking about today, and the availability of other resources, nothing's guaranteed. You know, water, it goes without saying, but other resources like plastic, labor, all of our other resources are no longer reliable to the degree that they once were. We want to make sure that we're resilient so that if something catastrophic does happen, we're able to rebound from that to the degree possible. And also quality of life, which has always been a big deal, but particularly after COVID, people are really, really interested in making sure that they are able to engage with their landscapes as much as possible. And this may actually be the most important part of this puzzle, because we could uproot everything we have here. We could remove every bit of landscaping. We could remove every tree, remove every lawn, and we would probably be in pretty good shape in terms of fire, water, resources, and resiliency, but nobody would want to live here. And so that really defeats the purpose. So we designed this 5-year plan to try and address these issues in a way that is most absorbable by as many people as possible. And this plan has 4 phases. We're going to talk about only the parts that pertain to water here. So our first phase is simplification, which is really removing everything that is no longer working for us. And in particular, we're removing something called low value landscapes. So what is a low value landscape? It's a landscape that has a low return on investment, meaning that it costs more to maintain than it adds to your overall quality of life or setting or aesthetic preference. There are landscapes that are in areas that are really not seen or used by anybody. So these two pictures that you can see on the screen, the one on the left is a tiny little slice of lawn that's getting mowed every week. It's getting fertilized a few times a year. It's getting aerated. It's getting watered. But it is on the side of a building where there's not a single window or door, and it's just in an area where it's totally unnecessary. So going in there and even just turning the irrigation head off is, you're saving 100% of the water that you are using on that tiny little lawn there. On the right-hand side is another lawn that is seen. It's along a roadway, but it's also on the back of a carport and on the side of a building, and it's not in any kind of location where anybody's going to use it for lawn. So that lawn has since been removed. And then there are landscapes that are simply non-viable. You can throw as many resources at them as you want to, and they are just not going to thrive. It's just a waste of your time and a waste of your money. And then there's inefficient landscapes. When they're shaped in a way that you can't efficiently irrigate them, or if they're on slopes where you're never going to get water to stick. And then finally, landscapes that are so high maintenance that we are not capable of providing the maintenance that they require in order to look good. So here's an example of a really small, low value landscape. This is a recently redone lawn area that's on the back of some buildings that have, some planting there so that they really can't even see the lawn. It's also between a parking area, and what's out of view on the right side of this image is a very large lawn. So we decided that this could probably be better used as something else. And this is brand new. I mean, it's about 2 weeks old, and already, to me, I think it looks beautiful. And this mutual is going to be saving more than 14,000 gallons of water per year, every year, but also almost 90 pounds of chemicals in the way of fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, and they'll also be saving a little bit of maintenance. And this lawn is under 1,000 square feet. So our next phase is to create parks for everyone. Now, we had started this before COVID hit, and this image that you're seeing now is about 5 years old, and people go to it all the time and they say, I want my landscape to look like that. It's really dynamic. There's lots of hummingbirds that visit this site. It's beautiful in a different way at every different junction of the year. And these people that point to this and say, hey, I really love that, I want that, they don't realize that this was an 11,000 square foot lawn. I mean, that is just a gargantuan lawn, and there's still lawn here even after the fact, which really didn't turn out to be particularly necessary. But in converting this 11,000 square foot lawn, not only have you gained this gorgeous park, but you're saving 179,000 gallons of water per year and more than 1,000 pounds of chemical each year. That's a half a ton of chemicals each year. Here's another smaller one. Sandra, I saw that you're on the call today, so you'll particularly like this. This is in First Walnut Creek Mutual. It's a lawn that looks okay in this photo, but actually it was in pretty bad shape. And again, it's sandwiched behind a carport, and there is a building off to the right-hand side. This was converted to a native garden and a seating area. And who wouldn't prefer this over the lawn, even if the lawn is in good shape? It's just sort of boring. And then here's another one where we converted an area that used to be lawn a few iterations ago and converted it to a California native garden. And people walk through it every day and they say that they enjoy watching things mature, and we're all looking forward to seeing it attract butterflies and everything else. So that takes us to the final phase of our plan, which is really getting in there and establishing balance. So what we are really trying to impart on everybody here and everybody in the community is that forcibly removing landscapes that are important to people is not effective in the long run. Instead, what we can do is we can emphasize value. And in that way, we can design these new landscapes to the preferences of the people that live here and make sure that they are getting their cake and eating it too, like Lou said earlier. So the first thing we have to do is recognize the fact that people are attached to their turf. A lot of people think of it as being this lush green open space for dogs and children to play. There are also some benefits. You know, nobody will deny that it's much cooler physically to stand on a lawn than it is on concrete. It does absorb some degree of carbon dioxide, and it can provide habitat for some pollinating insects. However, turf takes between 2 and 5 times as much water as shrubs or trees. So here at Rossmoor, we have a lot of moderate water use landscapes, and even those take half the amount of water as lawn. Now, if you're going down to really drought tolerant landscaping, then we're talking about that 500% range. But what a lot of people aren't talking about is just how many chemicals lawns use. So here in Rossmoor, we fertilize our lawns between 4 and 6 times a year. And it's a lot of fertilizer. And then, of course, you know, lawns grow weeds, and so we have to treat those weeds. And lawns also attract a lot of rodents. We have a real problem with gophers, moles, and voles, and those take certain types of pesticides to eradicate. And then, of course, every lawn requires mowing and aerating and all kinds of other attention paid to it in order for it to look its best. So for all of the benefits that lawn can provide, it is clear that having this excessive turf that Kristen referred to is costing us dearly. So what we are trying to emphasize is that turf should be treated like X. I said chocolate. You could say wine. You could say cheesecake. You could say red meat. Any of those things where you enjoy it in moderation, treat it like that. We don't have to eliminate it completely. We don't have to go on a crash diet for lawn, but we do need to make sure that we are using it sparingly so that we can continue to enjoy the benefits of lawn without causing all of these other harmful consequences. So with that, we developed this Give a Foot, Get a Foot lawn improvement program. Now notice that this is a lawn improvement program, not a lawn reduction program. It is, of course, a lawn reduction program, but it's important that people recognize that it's both. So what we've been doing is we have been working with residents when we're going through and renovating entries or renovating landscapes, and we're working with them to identify which lawns are most important to them. And then we're committing to preserving those lawns and updating them, making sure that they're as healthy as they can be, and that we're using the most modern blends of turf. And then what we're doing is we're looking at everything else, and we're saying, okay, so let's convert that other thing. So this program is called Give a Foot, Get a Foot, because for every square foot of lawn that we are renovating, we are requiring that a square foot of lawn elsewhere must be converted to a non-turf landscape. And, you know, that sounds severe. It sounds like, oh, so you're having lawn everywhere. Yes, we are. But what we will see later in this presentation is that we're having lawn, and in the process, we're seeing that even these half lawns are still too much lawn. So again, you know, once we have identified where the lawns are to remain, we can look at everything else and we can convert them to something that people will enjoy. Seating areas, parks, if they're out of the way, we let them naturalize. And people have been really, really receptive to this because they have their lawn and they also have these plants that are bringing all kinds of wildlife and color and interest to their landscape. And then finally, we're getting all kinds of EBMUD rebates for this, which Kristen is going to talk about later. So these are the results of this first lawn that I'm showing you. So this is a lot of lawn. It still seems like too much lawn, but look at the difference from what they looked like before. So that top image, you can't tell because the lawn is in such terrible condition, but it extends all the way back to the foot of that hillside behind it. So what we did is we halved it. And then this lawn on the bottom, same thing, it extended quite a ways back. And so we halved that as well. So this project, again, despite the fact that we have so much lawn left, we were able to remove 5,000 square feet of lawn and are saving an estimated 61,000 gallons a year. But most importantly, the residents are happy. And that is what we need in order to make sure that this kind of progress can be sustained into the future. So one of the qualifications for this program is that the lawns that we're preserving are viable. So what makes a lawn viable is, first of all, that it's flat, because if we're trying to put a lawn on a sloped area, you lose a lot of water to run off, and that's just wasteful. We also want all of our remaining lawns to be greater than 8 feet in each direction, which seems a little bit counterintuitive. But the most efficient irrigation technology we use now has a minimum cast of 8 feet. So if they're any smaller than that, we end up with what's called overspray. And then we want to make sure we're putting these lawns in areas where they have a chance to thrive and are not competing with trees for the nutrients, which then causes both the lawn and the trees to look bad. And finally, we need to make sure that there is at least some sunlight. We don't have much luck with trying to make lawns look good in complete shade. If other people have advice for that, I'd be happy to hear it. So here's a couple examples. This one is up on Skycrest. And you would never look at this and guess that this is a lawn reduction program. But this is what the lawn looked like before. And this is what we reduced it to. So we've reduced it by 2/3, actually. This was more than give a foot, get a foot, because there's quite a bit of lawn off to the right of this picture. And again, here's the end result. It's well used, it's beautiful, and it's a lot less lawn and a lot less of all the other inputs that the lawn required. Here's another one also on Skycrest. This one was pretty easy because the existing lawn was just in such abysmal shape. So what we did is we looked at it, and again, we worked with the residents to determine which lawn was important to them, and they determined that the strip of lawn between the sidewalk and the road was what was important. So that's what we preserved, and that's what we improved. And then some of these other sections that had been lawn, we took and we made this one into a little seating area with a couple of native plants. And the strip of lawn that was off to the right of this image, we just converted to plants so that it wasn't lawn. And then this one is probably my favorite example. So this is a gigantic lawn, and it's hard to tell from this image, but part of it is sloped and part of it is flat. And so the residents were really, really attached to lawn. There was a whole lot of pushback about converting this lawn to something else. But luckily, a resident landscape architect, her name is Paula Erickson, stepped in and designed this new landscape for us. And we were able to reduce this lawn again by 2/3. And this is the end result. And I don't know anybody who would choose this over this. And again, they still have an incredible amount of lawn, but are saving almost 150,000 gallons of water per year and about 900 pounds of chemicals a year. And so the conclusion is that we want to start by identifying what is valuable to your customer. Almost every customer, even those that are trying their best to do the right thing, are uncomfortable giving up lawn. So what we want to do is work with them and figure out, okay, well, which part of this lawn is so important to you? What is it about the lawn that's so important to you? And then we can work out from there and negotiate everything else. And then we want to demonstrate desirable alternatives so that people start making that choice on their own. If we haven't learned anything from the last 18 months, it would be that people don't really like to be told what to do, even if it's in their best interest. So instead, work with them, help them determine their needs, and show them how it can be better. And then finally, progress, not perfection. As I said earlier, we don't want to go on this crash diet when it comes to water and lawns. We want to pick a course that we will be able to sustain into the future. We may not be able to save as much water as we want as quickly as we want, but if we are saving a consistent amount over the long term, soon enough we'll turn around and say to ourselves, look how much better we are now than we were before. So some turf reduction is better than no turf reduction, and having an appropriate amount of turf where it can be shared, used, and enjoyed by many will ensure that people don't feel deprived, and then they may be willing to give up non-functional lawn elsewhere for good. That is the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'll get mine up and running here. All right. Those were some beautiful examples of ways to take spaces into non-lawn versions. So, welcome. I'm Anne Marie with California Native Plant Society. And we're talking about barriers to overcoming removing lawns. So we've been doing some studies and some work on this and trying to help understand what happens with when we discuss removing lawn and putting in, for us, putting in natives or putting in other alternative landscapes that particularly for EBMUD would be low or very low water use. So some of the things that we hear back are the emotional perceptions. Lawns have obviously been kind of the perfect vision of how we see this version of an American dream. They are, you have a lawn, you have a tree, you have a white picket fence, there's some hedges, maybe there's some seasonal color. These are kind of the normal for the neighborhood that people are in, the perceptions that they have or that their neighbors and neighborhood, their HOA have on that that's a nice neighborhood, this is what a good lawn looks like. And that other things like xeriscaping being xeriscaping or those pieces. So there's a lot of emotional pieces attached to how we view lawn, how we think of lawn in our lives, how we all think it feels good. The idea is that it would feel good to walk across it in bare feet. The reality is most of us will have allergic reactions and our children will roll down the lawn and get rashes, but it does have this beautiful view that we've historically bought into. And then we have people who say things like, their children can't play baseball on cactuses. So there's some deep ingrained pieces that we're trying to overcome in some areas of the EBMUD region and throughout the state. But lawns are a very water heavy crop and a very, as Rebecca was pointing out, also a very chemical heavy crop. And they're emblematic of a skewed relationship to the land, as Michael Pollon points out. So we've historically asked for our lawns to be decorative, to screen us from traffic or from neighbors, to have an anchor tree in front. And now we're asking a lot more out of our landscapes. We're asking them to provide pollinator and habitat, to help us with water runoff, to add food values, to include all these bigger things with biodiversity and with climate change issues. So how does that all play in? Well, for us, we're seeing it through the filter of native plants. And often if you go to good nurseries, they have great native plant areas. Sometimes you'll see things labeled as native that are questionable. So what is a native? A native is anything that grew here naturally. It co-evolved with the pollinators, it co-evolved with the soils of that area, it evolved for the phenology of the area to have the various wet and dry seasons that naturally occur in those spaces. And as such, it's going to need a lot less water, maintenance, time, chemicals involved with it. And we take this view that we had of these lawns and this emotional piece we had in it. And if we look at them and realize that they're a little bit more sterile, and we have this opportunity to really show a beautiful view of what lawns could be instead. So if we took half the area in the US that is currently in lawn and we replaced it, we could have more than 20 million acres of new habitat. Imagine the habitat value, that's more than national parks. So it's an opportunity to be so much more than just to be lawn. So why natives? In this case for us, it's a lot of the things that both Lou and Rebecca talked about, but we are saving water. We are reducing the maintenance, the runoffs. We are doing pulling out the negatives, increasing the positives. The chemicals that would otherwise be around your house, in your neighborhood, near your pets, near your children, running off into your waterways. We don't need to be doing that so much. And right now we're in a fairly severe stretch of drought. I split my time between Oakland and Cazadero, and wells are going dry up here in the coastal redwoods in a way that they haven't before. So recognizing that we are, in once again, another way, in unprecedented times. And how do we deal with that and maybe use natives as a beautiful way to help evolve into our lawns into less need for water. So using natives also supports our local pollinators. We've all heard how much we need bees. We talk about the monarchs, and some of these pollinators have co-evolved with native species, and they need just those 1, 2, half dozen native species to really do well. So learning which species these pollinators need, what they would normally be having in your region, can be a really important way to support the area and help your clients or customers really feel connected to their space in a new way. If we look at that, Doug Tallamy has terrific talks. If you haven't seen him, totally worth looking up. We can use the biodiversity aspect as a way to filter and help people feel really good about their landscape choices. You can choose an oak tree that has 270 species that it supports instead of choosing, a crepe myrtle. We can choose a currant or a California lilac instead of a daisy or a daffodil. And we're still getting these beautiful landscapes, but the biodiversity factor has just skyrocketed. And now all of a sudden you have butterfly gardens, you have hummingbirds coming into your yard. You've got this richness of an ecosystem around you. Plus it can be beautiful. I've got a couple of views here of what these can look like, that they don't need to be xeriscaping or that they don't need to be sterile looking areas that are mostly rock. Instead, we have the opportunity to have spaces like this and like what Lou and Rebecca were showing us, the opportunity to have spaces to really enjoy everything around us and connect to our environment and to have it with more time. But we hear a lot about we need it for our dog. We need it for our kids. This is my youngest and a totally stolen picture of my cousin's dog, some of my favorite creatures on the planet. And they were playing on grass in their, and running. But how can we do that in ways that they're going to enjoy, that they're going to get as much out of in places where we don't need the grass as much? So we can do this for kids. Kids are such great little scientists to begin with. They want to know everything. They want to touch and feel and learn all about their region. So planting a garden, plant tomatoes in the garden with them, teach them to make a tomato soup in the fall, get them fully integrated in the whole piece with their food cycle. Bring in play structures, give them the chance to climb things, fall off of things, run up and down things, and really, learn and enjoy that type of play in their yard. Bring in things that will let them enjoy the habitat, let them see birds and butterflies, let them have a gazebo that shades them from the heat, from the rain. There's a lot of different ways to let them enjoy beyond having just a grass yard to go out and play with. And if we're doing it for dogs, dogs are some of the best ones to hang out with in these alternative spaces. If we've got dogs out here, it's really about knowing your dog and knowing what you want for your dog and what your dog wants out of a yard. So what is your dog? What do they like to do? Do they have zoomies? Are they diggers? Do you know what their breed is and what that often means? Look at how your dog uses the yard. Our office, we have someone who's known for saying the best thing you can put on your landscape is your shadow. So really knowing how your dog uses the yard, look at where they're running, where they're playing. We've had a speaker who talks about actually mapping out what their dog did in their yard and how they ran, where did they nap, and you design around those behaviors. If they are a digger, make sure they have a great area to dig and really get into. Where they're going to keep using the bathroom, don't fight it. It's almost impossible. If you haven't been able to change where they want to do that, incorporate it. Add some wood chips or add some grass in those areas. Put barriers around sensitive areas, either grow barriers or put in barriers. You can plant woody shrubs, hardy things around them to protect spaces that you want. Or if you have baby plants, put in stakes around it or other physical barriers and ways to keep the dogs around out of that particular area. If you're not up for or ready for having the whole yard be turned over to your dog, designate areas for them and enjoy having spaces for that. And feel free to share other ideas because we're all learning with these pieces. But also think about what not to do. The SPCA has a great plant list for what doesn't work for pets, including stone fruits. Stone fruits are bad. Cyanide, it's wrong to use cyanide in that way. Spiky plants, things that might cause puncture wounds. Puncture wounds hurt so bad, and it's just too easy to run into things. And delicate plants, anything that's really precious, that's going to not live through being run over, rolled over, whatever your dog's behavior is. Sometimes it's easier just to give in and not have it in there. And be ready to know there's some adaptive management that happens. You may plant something thinking it's going to be great in that spot. And this is true of any type of garden. You may have a terrific layout, and then for some reason, you just can't get certain ones to grow. So it's adaptive management. At CMPS's YouTube channel, we have a whole series called Naturehood. And one of them is, and here's the link, and I think they're going to be sending out links on dogscaping with native plants. How do you look at our fuzzy friends as they go into our landscapes? So we've talked about kids and dogs and some of the reasons people don't like them, but what do you do if somebody wants to change out their landscape preferences? So calscape.org is a terrific resource. Calscape gives you the opportunity to put in an address, filter by a bunch of different types of things, and then come out with a good list of plants specific to your area. We're running really short on time, so I'm not going to pop out and do it, but there is an advanced feature that gives you the chance to go in and say, I need a super low water use. I want it to be a butterfly garden. I want blue plants that grow between 3 and 6 feet tall, or whatever your parameters are. It'll give you a list. If you go in and you fall in love with a plant, there's also a section to read about it, learn how it needs to be installed, how it needs to be cared for, and what nurseries should have it available. So if you go to those nurseries, you may fall in love with your new favorite nursery. And it's a terrific way to start a relationship with people who can help you do this. Calscape also has a design wizard that gives you a chance to, if you're starting to look at how you would like to change out your lawn, you can answer a couple of quick questions. It'll give you some design ideas and then associated appropriate lists for your area. So it's a great starter place for learning how to change out lawns or to helping your customer. I'd forgotten I had this one in. Here's the garden planner. A couple of quick questions. You come out with a view of a landscape and an appropriate plant list that you can then take to the nursery you've just fallen in love with on Calscape, or your one around the corner that you already know. So thank you. We'll be working on questions, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Yes, we can start with our Q&A. And let's see. Is there any information about how effective tax or water utility incentives have been in California or in some of the more heavy water use cities? I'm not sure what you mean particularly, George, about effective, but I think that might be something I'm gonna have to get back to you about. We are in the process, EBMUD, of taking a look at our landscape rebate program over the last couple decades to see how much water we've saved approximately. So we're going to be doing that analysis. It's definitely popular when we hit a drought. We see a lot more response to people changing out their lawn. So there seems to be that kind of awareness that happens during a drought. But we are really working on studying how much water we're saving. I'm not sure what you mean by effective, if you mean by how much water is being saved, but we can talk more about that. You can also email me. Did Rossmoor do any calculations on the amount of reduced emissions due to reduced maintenance, Rebecca?
No, we didn't, but we are also converting over to entirely battery powered machinery. So we've already done that with our blowers. Slowly but surely, we're also doing it with our mowers. But the answer to your question is no, there haven't been any calculations.
It would be interesting. I bet there is there's some estimates you might be able to use on that to come up with that at some point in time if you get to that. Rebecca, would love to know how often and long are you watering your drought tolerant areas when established?
Honestly, probably too often and for too long. So in theory, in the warm season, we want to be watering it once a week. And depending on what kind of irrigation we have, we use a lot of bubblers, and they put out a half a gallon of water per minute, which is really, really fast. So we don't want to be watering for more than 5 minutes. And in theory, we do that once a week. A lot of our landscapes, because they are still trying to get their feet down into the soil, we're really finding that we're watering them twice a week. But we are trying to change that very, very slowly.
For Rebecca Pollon, are there efforts not to have lawn next to hardscape to avoid overspray and runoff? Instead, put the planted areas next to the hardscape?
Yes and no. We have lots and lots and lots of lawns that are right up against hardscape, and you can't avoid the overspray. You end up with the water on the sidewalk no matter what. So, I mean, we're not putting in any new lawns at all, with the exception of those that are being renovated. And then when we're renovating them, we're trying to figure out, which areas are going to have the least amount of overspray. So in that way, we're addressing it. And there are some other instances. For example, we converted a median from grass to landscaping, and we're doing the same thing again this year. And so the new plan is going to be not for the lawn, but even just for the shrubbery that's going to be in the median. We're going to have a wide band of cobble all the way along the hardscape, so that we don't have any overspray at all, even just for the plants, because some of it's going to be ground cover type stuff that will need overhead sprinklers still. So the answer to your question is probably no, but it doesn't mean that we haven't given it serious consideration. We just haven't had that much opportunity to actually implement that.
Okay, and this is for everyone, and anyone can join in and put it in the chat too if you have ideas on this. Where can one find specific studies comparing different lawn alternative plants? Think mat forming replacements that can take some foot traffic based on water use, seasonal dormancy, tolerance for foot traffic, and a map of plantings in public spaces, parks, medians, malls, etc. that can be seen in person.
I do have one suggestion. UC Davis is really active in doing all kinds of irrigation trials. So they've tested Carapia, they've tested UC Verde grasses, they've tested regular turf grasses. And then on campus, they have both an arboretum and they have an actual botanical garden. And so every time I'm driving through there, I try to make an effort to stop and look and see how their landscape is evolving. But I would say that that's one of the best resources.
That's awesome. And we are thinking about doing for the LAC something on low water grasses, turf alternatives for one of the presentations, so we can dig into that a little bit more. But it is a really good question. It is coming up a lot. Also, CalWEP just has some really good cut sheets on the multi-benefits of low water use gardens, sustainable gardens, and that is open to the public. You don't have to be a member. I will be sending you a link to that. Are there any specific places to see these plants in coastal regions, not just in Davis? And anyone can chime in on that in the chat. I think you're looking, Mary, for alternatives to lawn, like lawn Carapia, that kind of thing, low water use, lawn alternatives. to think
Not
about?
for the ground cover and lawn alternatives, but again, going to botanical gardens that are in your area. I don't know where you're, watching us from, but UC Berkeley has they've got 2 different botanical gardens, and they're both amazing. One is a California native garden, and the other one is, native. Not native. They've got plants from all over the world, and they're local. It's cheap to visit, and you'll see how things do right here in our very own climate. Not all of that stuff is going to be available because some of it's really rare plant material, but other stuff will be available and could at least give you ideas. But I would say, always check out the botanical gardens. San Francisco Botanical Garden is world class. And there are labels. So if you see something you really like, then you could take a picture of
Lower
it.
your hand.
There is there is also an app called Picture This. It will make you think you have to pay for it, but you don't. And it is a plant identifier app. So if you're walking around and you see something and you think, oh, wow, that is really cool. That could look great in my yard. I wonder what it is. You can pull up this app, and it's surprisingly accurate, and it'll tell you what kind of plant it is you're looking at.
Seek and iNaturalist have that feature also and are terrific for other options. And somebody put in the comments, going to your local nurseries and touring them. There are some terrific nurseries throughout the Bay Area that'll give you some of that information as well. Botanical gardens are a highlight if you have any opportunity to get into them. It's absolutely worth just for the day trip.
I'm going to be sending a link to our sustainable landscape demonstration gardens in the Bay Area. We have a map for that, and you can kind of see what's near you. Also is some more visits to landscape. Some of them are just HOAs that you can visit. They're on the street, but they've done an amazing job doing a conversion. So look for that in the follow-up email. Are there any state-sponsored rebates for turf removal? There used to be, Sean. I don't think they're up and running. You can kind of keep checking their website. It seems like it's a budgetary issue. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. I'm not sure if they are up and running, but I don't think so at this time. Question about artificial turf. Do you want to take a stab at that, Rebecca? Or are you writing something, Anne Marie?
I was writing because when I was with Rescape California, we did a study with the city of Glendale in Southern California, and looking at all current scientific information, found that it still uses a lot of water. Actually, if you're maintaining it well, it takes a lot of water to keep it cool, to keep it cleaned off. Depending on the type of synthetic turf, it can be very plasticky and which includes chemicals, some of the chemical issues. It often has kind of a heat island effect. It can get really, really hot. And because of the plastics in it, it creates micro tears in the skin, both on humans and on pets, which can be a problem. Plus it starves out the soil. It kind of covers the soil basically with plastic. And so the soil's not getting any water through it. You're not getting, building soil health for the rest of your plants.
And I'll add to that, Anne Marie mentioned that they actually take water. So we have a dog park here in Rossmoor, and it's in the shade, and it's not a particularly large dog park, and it's very popular and it gets really well used. We water it every night because the smell is so bad, because, grass can absorb some degree of waste, spit, dog, feces. Obviously plastic cannot, so it has to be cleaned, it has to be deodorized. And so our artificial turf is not at all drought tolerant. The other thing to consider is the artificial turf is very expensive to install. To get anything that's decent is usually right around $20 per square foot, which is more or less the same as you would pay for like a flagstone patio. So it's really pricey. And then if for whatever reason you decide that you don't like it and you want to remove it, it's very difficult because what you see is that very top layer of the artificial turf. Underneath it are several drainage layers. So if you're going to try and take that out, you have to take out not just all that plastic, but also all that drainage rock that's been installed underneath it.
Thank you. That was really excellent. I want to write a little cut sheet on that, Rebecca. For EBMUD rebates, do all lawns within an HOA association qualify? For example, green belts behind buildings, or must they be highly visible? They do not need to be highly visible. They're all can qualify. And it's up to $15,000 every 2 years. So there is a monetary ceiling. But I would go ahead and submit and go from there. It doesn't have to be highly visible. So let's see. When we talk about saving water, I'm realizing that soil structure, nutrients, native, and amendments are even more important in the long term for plant health and water conservation. Can anyone talk to that?
I'm happy to talk to that if nobody else wants to.
Why don't you start us off, Rebecca?
Okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right that making sure that you have good soil health is one of the most important things, because for one thing, if you have compacted dead soil, it doesn't just not absorb water, it actually repels it. So you have a lot of runoff before you ever get absorption of water. So it saves water in that way. It saves water because you're holding down, we use composted mulch. And so it covers the soil to keep moisture from evaporating, but also because there is so much organic material in it, as it breaks down, it attracts organisms through the soil, which then aerate the soil and improve the health of the soil. So we're finding here that we introduced this sort of regular mulching program with this composted mulch, and the results are much better than we expected, actually. And it's not cheap and it doesn't last forever, but the payback that you get from it is immense. So you're absolutely right that you have to feed the soil so the soil can feed the plants. The other option is to just feed the plants with fertilizer. The problem is fertilizer is really detrimental for soil health. So by feeding plants with artificial material, you're then killing all the things that would allow your plants to sustain themselves. So you're better off, working from the bottom up and feeding the soil. And yeah, you're right. It's very, very important.
Excellent. So I'm having a hard time finding someone with the skills to properly maintain the new plants we'll be installing along with the lawn we still have. I don't trust our current mow and blow crew. I looked at Rescape's professional directory and contacted some people. Some are too busy to take on more clients. Others don't respond. Any tips for how to find someone? I'm in a small condo complex with an HOA. Everyone is also very budget conscious.
Well, most of the CNPS chapters, probably for this region, it's the CNPS East Bay chapter. If you contact the chapter, they often have landscapers that they will recommend. CNPS, working with Theodore Payne Foundation, is currently in the final stages of a pilot project for a native plant landscaper. I will put out that one of the things that we're working on is that people need to be valuing this work. If you're doing it well, once you're really established and doing well, it shouldn't be more often, definitely, than a mow and blow type situation. But we need to value the skills that go into that. For now, contacting your local chapter might be a really good way. I'm not sure, East Bay Mud, do you have lists?
We don't have lists, but Contra Costa Water District does. And sometimes I send folks over there to their landscape design assistance program. They have a list of qualified designers. And some of those designers could also possibly help you out with some tips on some maintenance folks. If you are kind of got a good relationship with your mow blow crew, you could kind of work with them to see if they could go to the Rescape maintenance and design programs to help them learn some of these techniques, because the education is out there and Rescape does provide it. And they do offer scholarships. So they're always running another maintenance course. And so that would be something else I would recommend to your gardener if you want to keep them, but you want to just help them build their skills. Okay, Andy provided a link to Stop Waste. I'm not sure what it was about, but Stop Waste is an excellent resource about sheet mulching and compost. You're going to find a lot there. And let's see, it seems EBMUD requires a lot of plantings to convert a lawn. Our HOA recommendation is 120 plants in a lawn conversion area, which seems to defeat the purpose. Recommendation, 100 plants. We are looking for it to have at least 50% plant coverage after you remove your lawn, because we don't, if you just have chips, you don't get the benefits of converting CO2. Your soil will become dead. We aren't looking to create dead space. We do want to convert it to a live space, which is going to help with CO2 conversion, and also with the heat island approach, because by just putting chips down, you're like putting just down pavement. So we're trying to avoid that and continue to have a live space. And that's why we have that requirement of 50%. Are those trainings given in Spanish? They do have some trainings in Spanish. And Rescape right now is kind of putting it out there, like, what is the demand for Spanish? Quell offers it in Spanish, Qualified Water Efficient Landscaper. And that's another way to help your landscaper if you want to give them some tips on improving their education in sustainable landscaping. Quell is another one. You just Google Quell. And we just held a number of them in Spanish, and I think they're rolling up again. Very popular with the Spanish-speaking landscapers. I think it was full. So that's another idea for you.
I've sent some of my guys to the QL trainings, and they're extremely helpful. So for those of you that have never seen it, it's QWEL, stands for Quality Water Efficient Landscaper. And it's put on, I think, by the Sonoma Marin. I don't know. Right, yeah, but their, what do you call it? Their paperwork and their pamphlets they're fantastic. I highly recommend it.
There's also the CLCA's Water Management Certification Program, which certifies contractors on their ability to manage a landscape to a budget. There's also Waterfluence, which actually ranks contractors based on their ability to drive water efficiency with their customers, as well as customer satisfaction.
And a question about CEUs. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the beginning, but this is, you can get CEUs for Quell, Rescape, IA, Master Gardeners, and Rescape today. And all you have to do for the Quell is mention, write down the name of the presentation, the date, and you will get credit for it. Okay, what is the spread of your plants you selected? Are you thinking of the 120, Robert, Bob? I think you probably are, from that HOA. And yeah, just to clarify, EBMUD's requirement of 50% is at full maturity, that the plants are 50% plant coverage. So I think we're going to, just in time, we are going to move on to resources and rebates. And if we have any other time at the end, we can answer a few more questions. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to have to go through all this. Little review.
Good thing. Landscapes.
There we go. So a lot of you submitted your barriers and your solutions. And I think we covered a lot of that today. You know, that people have a traditional aesthetic, they want more green, aversion to change, need for versatile, resilient ground covers. They love lawn for children and pets. They're open if they can find a neat alternative. And we, you know, one of the most important things for people is to see, as all three panelists showed, a beautiful change. And for, I think in Rebecca's case, I think she mentioned this to me, that now homeowners at their HOA are asking her for a conversion because they want that beautiful landscape that replaced the lawn. So, Rebecca's approach of just feeding it to them little by little and then becoming accustomed and acclimated to it, then that becomes a new normal for them, their new aesthetic, their new sense of place that they're attached to emotionally, and then they want more of it, and they grow to really love it. So time and money. And we talked about like how much more money in some ways the maintenance of a lawn can be. You have to pay for the fertilizer, you got to pay for the mowing, you have to pay for the maintenance. And it can be a real sink. So when you're talking to your clients about this, the water savings and the money savings, it's not just for the project, it's really over the long haul. We talked about knowledge of gardeners, and also, showing them these are your solutions, showing them some successful examples of lawn conversion. You can ask them to go to one of these arboretums, or, have them go out to see Rossmoor, see all the changes. There's a lot of pictures online, and we have a whole gallery that I'm going to give you a link to, and also, our EBMUD plant book. If nothing else, it is like very inspirational to bring to clients to show them what is possible. Show them the bill. I just did a quick look at it. I'm going to be sending you this tool on our water efficient landscape design calculator. It shows you how much water you can save over a year when you convert a well-watered lawn to a water efficient landscape. And, Rebecca gave us those numbers. They were huge. And I was also like really impressed by like how much tons, or what her numbers on chemicals was just astounding and really kind of frightening in a way. But I did a quick calculation before today's presentation, and I did 5,000 square foot in Danville uses about 200,000 gallons of water a year. That's a lot. You can't even get your brain around that. You replace that 5,000 with very low, probably a lot of summer dry, and you're using 8,000 gallons of water a year. So it's like, what? It's just an amazing amount of water that can be saved. And listen, Anne-Marie's well just went dry. We need to save some water, right? Okay, use the thread of the water bill. And the more water you use at EBMUD, the cost does go up. It is tiered. And I can send you more about our rates, but it does go up. And our super rebates. I think this is a little bit more of the same. Faster approvals. And I think that approvals meant EBMUD rebates. And I did check. We are in a high season right now. We're down a couple staff, but it does take about 2 weeks to maybe get approved. It's going to be faster if you're an HOA or a commercial site because it goes right to me, and we don't have as many of those coming in. So that's a faster process. The other way to make it faster is have your whole application complete. That means existing conditions, pictures, your plant list completed, the whole application completed, and email it to us rather than mail it to us, and it will go faster. Let's see, sandy soils. Really, we don't have a lot of time to go into that a lot, but it's really about doing it more frequently with smaller amounts. That's the real basics on sandy soils. So we don't have more time for that today. Weed abatement that works longer than cardboard. One thing with the cardboard is you can layer it and use more than, one layer, use 2 or 3, and that's going to last longer. The other thing I have found in my own little front yard is you grow, established plants that are eventually going to cover your space. So there's no openings, and your shrubs are going to outcompete the weeds. Now, you're going to have to do a little tiny bit of weeding because nothing can be just, set and forget. There is a little bit of weeding, but it's not the amount of work that you would have to do for a lawn. So, and then you can use cardboard again, come back to it and just spot check if you need to while your plants are getting established. Someone requests, sometimes your customers have one view of what's going on with their landscape, And you as a professional might need to go out and do the site visit to really gather the right information you need to give them the right ideas of what to do. So we pretty much talked about this, and let me dive into, tips for promoting the program. We have no problem with you putting a link on your website to our EBMUD conservation page. And a number of nurseries and irrigation centers have done that. So when the customers are looking, they can go right to the EBMUD rebates, and you can do that for your own website if you'd like. So our rebates, $2,000 for residential properties every 2 years, $15,000 for commercial every 2 years. And then we have a new super rebate. Our standard is 75 cents per square foot. Our super is $1.50 per square foot. And since July, when we launched this, 70 out of the 30 applications that have come in have been the super rebate, so double. People are eating it up. They want to do this. And we're going to be doing pre and post surveys. So we're finding out what the barriers are, what was hard about the rebate, easy about the rebate. And this is, I think, maybe the first time we've done a survey on this. So we are going to hopefully be able to expedite our process a little bit better when we get their feedback. But this is what it contains. You have to pick 3 out of the 4. Compost, and we heard about why compost is so important. Sheet mulching, and we don't want that, to reduce the amount of the lawn. Actually, when you rip it out, it goes to the landfill. It doesn't get composted. And there it is creating methane gases, which is a stronger gas than the CO2. And that's part of this AB 1383 that we're going to learn about in December. But that's another reason why we want to be sheet mulching, also to reduce the amount of chemicals. 50% native plants, and planting in the cool season. We're trying to shift people's orientation to planting in the cool season rather than the spring and summer, when then you have to start using a lot of water. So those are the 4. Pick 3 out of the 4 and you get double your money. The median strip is or lawn strip is for commercial only. That includes HOA. It's also $1.50 square foot. These are the sites that are the biggest water wasters, because you can see how inefficient it is to water. And why do you need lawn there? You really don't need lawn there. So we're going to give you $1.50 square foot to take that out. So you're going to get you're going to get all of this in an email, but just resources, the Rossmoor 5-year plan. We're going to be sending you a link to that to get to all the information that Rebecca provided for us today. A link to the Dogscaping with Natives, the CalScape website, and that does have plant and soil requirements. Somebody asked about soil requirements, and it digs into what kind of soil each plant needs. And bloom times, your folks want blooms all year long. It's possible, at least 11 months out of the year. Pick plants that have various bloom times. The Sustainable Landscape in California, a guidebook for commercial and industrial site managers. This is if you have a more tricky spot and you have to get a lot of buy-in and work it up the chain of command. This could kind of help you streamline that process. The California Water Efficiency Partnership has a really good cut sheets on the multi-benefits of landscape transformation for you to share with your customers. And the Water Efficient Landscape Design Calculator to help you calculate how much water you can save by turning your lawn into a low water use garden. I'm really plugging Contra Costa Water District here. They have a lot of videos and PowerPoint presentations on drip conversion, because there were some questions about irrigation. So it doesn't have to be that expensive. You can take your existing system and just convert it to drip, and Contra Costa will walk you through that. So for EBMUD rebates, photo gallery, mulch coupons, our plant book, sustainable landscape map to go out and visit some of these sites and get a feel for it, ebmud.com, and then a little bit about our water rates if you're trying to get your customers on board with your water rates. So thank you so much for joining us today. We have quite a bit in the chat, and we're going to take a look at it. But anyway, and thank you, Lou, Rebecca, and Anna-Marie. You tied together so well, and you all made such incredibly important points. I believe everyone really enjoyed it. So that looks like they're talking about cardboard. And you're welcome to stay on if you'd like for a minute. But I think we're all done with the questions. And I think the chat has been, we're all caught up in the chat. All right. Well, thank you again. We'll see you in December for AB 1383, talking about compost. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kristen, for hosting.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kristen.
Bye, everyone.